There is a silence we all long for, a quiet place beyond the constant noise of the world. Every morning, before we even open our eyes, the weight of another day presses down on us. Emails pile up, bills wait on the counter, notifications blink. Like restless fireflies, each one pulling us away from ourselves. We tell ourselves we will find peace when the work is done, when the money is enough, when the house is clean, when the relationship is steady. But that moment never seems to arrive. The treadmill keeps running, and we keep running with it, out of breath. Always a few steps behind the life we thought we would have by now. Maybe you have felt it late at night, lying awake in bed. Your body is exhausted, but your mind keeps racing. What if I fail? What if I am not enough? What if tomorrow brings more of the same? These questions circle in the dark like restless birds. They remind you of something you already know, but rarely admit. You are tired. Not only tired in your body, but tired in your soul. The weariness is deeper than sleep can cure. It is the fatigue of chasing after a peace that always seems just beyond reach. In moments like this, we begin to suspect that something is broken in the way we live. We achieve more than any generation before us. We move faster, connect quicker, consume endlessly. And yet, inside, many of us feel emptier than ever. The stress gnaws at us. The anxiety whispers. The loneliness hides beneath the surface. Even when we are surrounded by people, we try to escape it with entertainment, with shopping, with another glass of wine. But when the noise fades, the ache remains. This ache is not yours alone. It is the human condition in our modern world. Behind the bright screens and smiling photos, countless people carry the same invisible weight. They ask silently, is this all there is? Am I destined to live hurried, worried, and unsatisfied until the end? Or is there another way? There is another way. It is not a new invention. It is not a product to buy or a trick to master. It is a wisdom older than empires, a wisdom that has carried people through centuries of storms. It does not promise you a life without problems, but it offers you something even greater, a way to face your life with courage, clarity, and compassion. It offers you freedom inside, even when the world outside is restless. This journey is not about leaving your family, your job, or your responsibilities. It is about discovering that within you lies a wellspring of calm, a place no noise can reach, no burden can crush. The teachings we will explore together are not rigid dogmas. They are practical keys, timeless tools to unlock the peace that has been waiting inside you all along. They speak not in the voice of judgment, but in the gentle tone of a friend who has walked the same road and knows the way forward. Over the next chapters, we will walk step by step through the struggles that shape our lives, stress, money, relationships, anxiety, and more. We will not hide from the pain. We will name it. We will feel it. But then we will look deeper, guided by ancient wisdom that shows us how to loosen the knots of suffering. Each problem will reveal a door. Each door will open toward freedom. And as we move through these teachings, you will see that peace is not a faraway dream. It is not waiting for you in some perfect future. It is here, now, within your reach. All you need is the courage to turn inward, the patience to listen, and the willingness to let go of what no longer serves you. That is the path before us. That is the invitation. And it begins here. The human heart carries a quiet hunger, a longing, that words can barely capture. At times, it feels like a shadow following us wherever we go. At other times, it bursts forth as a wave of yearning that makes us stop, take a breath, and wonder why life feels incomplete. We may have a job, a home, a family, and yet inside, there is an emptiness that does not disappear. It is not the hunger for food or the thirst for water. It is the ache for meaning, the search for peace. This universal longing is what unites you us all, no matter where we live or who we are in the modern world. This longing shows itself in countless ways. A young professional scrolls endlessly on her phone, chasing a sense of connection that never satisfies. A father returns home late, after working 12 hours, wondering if all the effort will ever give him the comfort he seeks. A college student feels the weight of expectations pressing down, grades and future plans circling his mind until he can hardly breathe. They may not put it into words, but inside each of them is the same cry. I just want to feel whole. I just want to rest. We live surrounded by noise, the constant ringing of notifications, the pressure to do more, to earn more, to be more. We push ourselves into the stream of busyness, believing that if we swim hard enough, if we stay ahead long enough, peace will eventually arrive. But peace does not come that way. We collapse into bed at night, body aching, mind restless, spirit unsatisfied. No matter how much we gain, the emptiness whispers in the background, asking if this is really the life we were meant to live. Think of the last time you felt a deep stillness, a moment untouched by stress. Perhaps it was while watching the sunset, or sitting beside a quiet lake, or holding the hand of someone you love. In that instant, time seemed to soften, and a quiet joy arose without effort. That is the kind of peace our hearts long for. But such moments are rare, fleeting like fireflies. We try to capture them, but they slip through our fingers, and soon we are swept back into the storm of everyday life. The truth is, most of us are afraid to face the depth of our longing. We cover it with activity, with entertainment, with distraction. We shop, we scroll, we binge watch, we drink, we eat, we plan. Anything to keep from feeling the hollow space inside. But the longing does not disappear. It waits patiently, like a guest at the door. And the more we ignore it, the heavier our lives feel, until even small frustrations weigh us down like stones. This is not a flaw in you. It is not a weakness or a personal failure. It is part of being human. The Buddha once described it as the nature of existence itself. Life, as we usually live it, carries suffering. Not only the pain of sickness, loss, or hardship, but also the quiet dissatisfaction that lingers even when things seem fine. We crave for life to be different. We cling to what we have, fearing it will slip away. We resist what we do not want, hoping it will vanish. And in this push and pull, our hearts grow weary. Imagine holding a rope with both hands, pulling as hard as you can. Your muscles strain, your breath quickens, sweat runs down your face. But what if you discover no one is pulling on the other side? What if the rope is tied to nothing? The suffering was not in the rope itself, but in your endless grasping. This is what our longing feels like. We pull, we cling, we fight, without realizing that the release lies not in more effort, but in letting go. The modern world tells us that happiness comes from accumulation. More money, more recognition, more possessions. But look at those who have reached the heights of success. Many still feel restless. They may smile in photographs, but inside they wrestle with the same emptiness. This is why the Buddhist story speaks to us across centuries. A prince surrounded by luxury, shielded from pain, discovered that no amount of external comfort could satisfy the hunger inside. His longing mirrored ours. His question was our question. If life is filled with suffering, how do we find peace that lasts? The answer is not found by escaping the world or denying its beauty. The answer lies in turning inward. The peace we long for is not something to be bought, achieved, or chased. It is already within us, waiting to be uncovered. The Buddha called it awakening, not to something foreign, but to the truth of our own hearts. This awakening begins when we stop running and allow ourselves to be present with what is. Let us pause here. Take a breath. Feel the air move into your lungs and then slowly leave. For a moment, forget tomorrow. Forget yesterday. Simply notice this breath right now. You may sense a hint of quiet beneath the noise. That quiet is the doorway. That quiet is the beginning of freedom. The path ahead is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you are when the noise falls away. The stress, the anxiety, the loneliness, they do not define you. They are passing clouds. Beneath them, the sky of your awareness is vast, unshaken, eternal. This is the place where the longing is fulfilled. Not by adding more, but by realizing that you already hold the peace you seek. And so our journey begins. We will walk together through the pains of modern life stress that steals our joy, money worries that keep us awake at night, relationships that both heal and hurt, the anxiety that whispers in our minds. For each of these, we will not only see the pain, but also discover the gentle wisdom that can free us. The Buddha's teachings are not distant philosophies. They are practical, simple, and alive. They meet us in the very struggles we face each day. In the chapters to come, we will explore this longing more deeply. We will touch the wounds it creates, and then apply the balm of timeless wisdom. We will learn how to quiet the restless mind, how to soften the heart, how to embrace change without fear. Each lesson will open a new door, guiding us toward the home we have been searching for all along. For now, remember this: your longing is not a curse. It is a compass. It points you toward the truth that peace is possible, even here, even now. The ache inside is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that your heart remembers what it was made for: freedom, compassion, and joy. This is the beginning. The road will be long, but it is worth every step. And with each breath, you are already closer to the peace that has been waiting for you all along. The longing within us is powerful because it points to something real. It is not an illusion, nor a trick of the mind. It is the signal of the soul calling for freedom. Yet in our daily lives, we often mistake this signal for a demand to fill ourselves with more possessions, more achievements, more approval. When the emptiness grows heavy, we turn outward, hoping that the next purchase, the next promotion, or the next relationship will complete us. For a moment, it works. The new phone excites us. The raise makes us smile. The embrace warms our heart. But soon, the thrill fades. The hunger returns. The cycle begins again. This cycle can feel endless, like a wheel that keeps spinning no matter how much we run. In fact, the Buddha described it as just that, the endless cycle of suffering. We live caught in patterns of craving and resistance, forever chasing after what we want and pushing away what we fear. No matter how much we grasp, nothing stays the same. No matter how hard we resist, change always comes. And so we remain unsatisfied, trapped in a rhythm of wanting and fearing, holding and losing. But what if the longing is not a curse to be feared, but a teacher to be trusted? What if it is not pointing outward, but inward? Imagine being lost in a vast desert, thirsty and exhausted. You may believe that water lies far away, beyond the horizon. But then you realize the map you have been following is upside down. The well is not far away. It is within reach, hidden beneath the sand. You stand on. This is how the spiritual path begins, with the discovery that the peace we long for has been inside us all along. Many resist this truth. The modern mind asks, how can peace be within me when I feel so restless? How can joy be my nature when I am filled with anxiety? The answer is simple, yet profound. Peace is like the sky. Clouds may cover it, storms may rage across it, but the sky remains vast, open, and untouched. In the same way, your awareness, the quiet space behind your thoughts and emotions, is always present, always whole. The problem is not that peace is missing. The problem is that we are too distracted to notice it. Distraction is the disease of our age. Our attention is pulled in 1,000 directions every day. We wake up and check our phones before we even greet the morning sun. We jump from one task to another, one screen to another, one worry to another. Rarely do we pause. Rarely do we breathe. We live as though running through a burning house, searching frantically for a way out, never realizing that the exit has been open the entire time. To heal this, we must relearn the art of stopping. Not stopping forever, not abandoning our lives, but pausing long enough to see what is real. This is where the teachings of mindfulness offer a doorway. Mindfulness is not about emptying the mind or forcing silence. It is simply the practice of noticing the breath as it rises and falls, noticing the thoughts as they appear and pass, noticing the feelings that come and go like waves on the shore. Each act of noticing pulls us out of the fog of distraction and into the clarity of the present moment. At first, this may feel difficult. The mind resists. The body fidgets. Thoughts race louder than ever. But this is not failure. It is the beginning of freedom. Just as muddy water clears when left undisturbed, the restless mind begins to settle when we stop stirring it with endless grasping. Slowly, the stillness beneath the noise emerges. Slowly, we discover that the longing inside us is not asking for another distraction, but for this very stillness. Stillness does not mean escape. It does not mean leaving behind your work, your family, or your responsibilities. It means carrying a sense of presence into all that you do. Imagine cooking. Dinner, usually a rush of chopping, boiling, stirring, while your mind leaps ahead to emails or arguments. Now imagine cooking the same meal with mindful attention, feeling the texture of the vegetables, hearing the sound of the knife, smelling the aroma rising from the pan. The action is the same, but the experience is transformed. The longing for peace is answered not by doing something different, but by doing what you already do with awareness. This is the subtle miracle of the path. You do not need to become someone else to find peace. You only need to wake up to the life you already have. The longing is fulfilled when you stop searching outside and begin noticing inside. Yet, mindfulness alone is not the full answer. The heart longs not only for presence, but for connection. Many of our deepest wounds come from relationships conflict, betrayal, misunderstanding, loneliness. The Buddha taught that the way to heal these wounds is through compassion. Compassion is the act of softening the heart, of opening the door to kindness, even when pain tempts us to close it. It is the willingness to see the humanity in others and in ourselves. Think of someone who has hurt you. Instantly, the mind may replay the injury, the words, the betrayal. But what happens if, instead of feeding anger, you whisper within yourself, "May they find peace. May they be free from suffering." This does not excuse their behavior. It frees you from the chains of resentment. It allows your longing for peace to extend beyond yourself, creating ripples of healing that touch everyone around you. The practice of compassion begins with yourself. Too often, we treat ourselves with harshness, demanding perfection, criticizing every flaw. But imagine speaking to yourself the way you would speak to a dear friend. Imagine saying, "You are trying your best. You are worthy of love. You are allowed to rest." This simple act can quiet the deepest longing, because much of our suffering comes not from the world, but from the war we wage against ourselves. And so the universal longing is answered in 2 steps: by remembering the stillness within us through mindfulness, and by opening our hearts through compassion. These are not grand gestures. They are small, steady practices woven into ordinary life. They turn each breath, each step, each interaction into a moment of awakening. The path is not instant. It unfolds slowly, like dawn breaking across the horizon. But with each step, the ache of longing softens. The emptiness fills with quiet presence. The restless mind discovers its home dot. As you walk this path, you may notice a shift. The longing that once felt like a burden now feels like a gift. It is no longer a cry of desperation, but a call to awaken. It led you here, to the doorway of truth. It reminds you that you are more than the noise of your life. You are the awareness beneath it, the compassion flowing through it, the peace waiting within it. This is the universal longing, the heart's call for freedom. And now that we have heard it, we can begin the journey of answering it. The next step in our journey will take us deeper into this question. We will look at the story of one who faced the same longing in a different time, under different circumstances. A young prince who seemed to have everything, yet felt the same emptiness. His story is not ancient history. It is a mirror of our lives today. It shows us that no matter how much we gain, without awakening, we remain unsatisfied. And it invites you to see beyond the golden cages of modern life, toward the freedom that awaits us. There comes a moment in every life when the walls of comfort begin to feel like a cage. From the outside, the cage may appear golden. It may shine with wealth, with recognition, with security. People may even admire it, envy it, tell you how lucky you are. But inside, you feel the truth. No matter how polished the bars, a cage is still a cage. This is the paradox of our modern lives. We can surround ourselves with luxury, success, and comfort, and still feel trapped. Consider the story of a prince long ago, born into a palace of unimaginable splendor. His father, determined to protect him from every hardship, built a world where pain did not exist. The prince was given the finest clothes, the sweetest foods, the most beautiful gardens. Musicians played to entertain him, dancers performed to delight him, servants catered to his every desire. He was never allowed to see sickness, or age, or death. His world was designed to be perfect. And yet, inside his heart, a quiet restlessness grew. This restlessness is not confined to palaces. You may feel it in your own life. Perhaps you live in a comfortable home, with a good job, a family, and all the conveniences modern society offers. From the outside, it looks ideal. But at night, when the lights go off and the noise settles, you sense something missing. You have everything you thought would bring happiness, but the fulfillment does not last. The golden cage is invisible, but you can feel its weight. The prince's story mirrors our own. Eventually, his curiosity led him beyond the palace gates. What he saw there shattered the illusion his father had built. He saw an old man, frail and bent with years. He saw a sick person, suffering with pain no wealth could ease. He saw a lifeless body, carried to the cremation ground. And finally, he saw a wandering monk, walking with quiet dignity, free from the fear that consumed everyone else. These four sights changed the prince forever. They awakened him to the truth that no amount of luxury can shield us from life's realities. Aging will come, illness will come, death will come. These truths spare no one, whether king or beggar. But he also saw another possibility. The monk represented a life not defined by fear, but by peace. This spark of awakening set him on a path that would transform not only his life, but the lives of millions for centuries to come. In our modern world, we encounter the same four sights in different forms. We see aging in the lines on our parents, faces in the aches of our own bodies as years pass. We see sickness in hospital visits, in diagnoses that remind us how fragile health is. We see death in headlines, in funerals, in the sudden loss of those we love. These experiences remind us that no matter how carefully we construct our lives, we cannot avoid reality. And yet, just as the prince saw the monk, we too catch glimpses of another way. Perhaps it is in the calm presence of a wise teacher, or in the simple grace of someone who has little yet radiates joy, or in the fleeting stillness we feel when we sit quietly beneath the stars. These glimpses ignite a question deep in our hearts. If suffering is inescapable, is there a way to live with peace anyway? This question is the beginning of wisdom. Many people spend their entire lives avoiding it. They distract themselves with work, with entertainment, with possessions, hoping to outrun the truth. But when the spark of awakening arrives, avoidance is no longer possible. We begin to see that pretending will not save us. Facing the truth is the only path to freedom. Facing the truth does not mean despair. It means clarity. The prince did not fall into hopelessness when he saw suffering. Instead, he allowed compassion to rise in him. He realized that if suffering touches every life, then every life deserves care, dignity, and love. His heart opened, and his longing shifted from personal comfort to universal freedom. This shift is available to us too. When we see suffering, either in ourselves or others, we can let it harden us, or we can let it awaken us. We can build thicker walls, or we can open wider hearts. Awakening begins when we choose the second path. It begins when we let pain teach us empathy, when we let loss remind us of love, when we let uncertainty guide us toward presence. The golden cage of our time may not be a palace, but it is built from similar illusions. We are told that if we work harder, buy more, and achieve greater success, we will finally be happy. Advertising whispers it, social media shouts it. Our own fears reinforce it. And yet, like the prince, many of us discover that even when the cage looks perfect, something is missing. We sense the truth our culture avoids. External perfection cannot guarantee inner peace. This realization is both frightening and liberating. Frightening because it strips away the illusions we once relied on. Liberating because it opens the door to a deeper kind of freedom. When we stop expecting the outer world to satisfy the inner longing, we can finally turn inward to discover what truly lasts. The spark of awakening often begins with discomfort, restlessness, dissatisfaction, even despair. These feelings are not enemies. They are invitations. They are the heart's way of saying, there is more to life than this. If you feel the weight of the golden cage, if you feel the ache of longing, take it as a sign that you are ready to awaken. The Buddha's journey began with this spark. Ours can too. We do not need to abandon our lives or walk into the forest as he did. We need only to recognize the truth, that suffering is real, that clinging to illusions does not free us, and that peace is possible through another way. This recognition is the first step. It is the moment when the search begins not in the marketplace, not in the palace, but in the heart. It is the moment when the bars of the golden cage begin to fade and the open sky of freedom comes into view. And as we continue, we will see how this spark of awakening grows into a path that avoids the extremes of indulgence and denial, and instead leads us to balance, wisdom, and peace. The spark of awakening does not burn brightly all at once. It begins as a flicker, a question that refuses to go away. For the young prince, it was the realization that everything he had been told about the world was incomplete. For us, it might be a sleepless night filled with questions about meaning. It might be the quiet sadness we feel, even after achieving what we thought would make us happy. It might be the emptiness that lingers when the party ends, the project finishes, or the purchase loses its shine. The awakening begins with honesty. It asks us to stop pretending that everything is fine when it is not. It asks us to admit that no matter how hard we try, suffering still finds its way into our lives. This admission is not weakness, it is strength. Because once we acknowledge reality, we can begin to face it with clarity instead of denial. The prince could have ignored what he saw outside the palace gates. He could have returned to the golden halls, distracted himself with pleasures, and pretended he was safe. But he did not. He allowed the truth to penetrate his heart. He allowed his restlessness to grow into determination. He knew that if suffering touches everyone, then there must be a way to meet it with wisdom. This decision to face suffering, instead of running from it, was the moment his journey truly began. You may feel a similar moment in your own life. Perhaps you notice that the things which once satisfied you no longer do. Perhaps you feel restless in a life that looks good on the outside, but feels hollow inside. Perhaps you sense a call to something deeper, though you cannot yet name it. This is the spark of awakening alive in you. It is the same flame that burned in the prince's heart centuries ago. It is the universal invitation to step beyond the golden cage. Stepping beyond does not necessarily mean leaving your family, your job, or your responsibilities. It means changing your relationship with them. It means recognizing that they cannot bear the impossible burden of giving you lasting peace. They can bring joy, comfort, and love, but they cannot erase suffering. When you stop demanding perfection from imperfect things, you free yourself. You discover that peace must be found within and then shared outward. The prince's awakening also revealed another truth. Suffering is not something to fear, but something to understand. When he saw old age, sickness, and death, he did not turn away. He looked deeper. He asked, "What is the nature of this suffering? Where does it come from? Is there a way beyond it?" These questions were not signs of despair, but of courage. They opened the door to the discoveries that would later become the foundation of Buddhist wisdom. We too can ask these questions. Instead of fearing suffering, we can approach it with curiosity. When anxiety grips us, we can pause and ask, what am I clinging to that fuels this fear? When anger rises, we can ask, what wound am I protecting by pushing others away? When loneliness settles in, we can ask, what illusion of separation am I believing right now? Each question shines light into the shadows of our hearts. Each question transforms suffering into a teacher. The golden cage of modern life is built not only from comfort, but from denial. We deny aging by chasing youth. We deny sickness by hiding from hospitals until we have no choice. We deny death by treating it as a forbidden subject. But denial does not protect us. It only deepens our fear. The spark of awakening burns away. Denial. It teaches us that freedom comes not from ignoring reality, but from embracing it fully. When you accept that life includes suffering, something surprising happens. You become less afraid, instead of clinging desperately to what cannot. Last, you begin to appreciate it as it is. Instead of fearing change, you learn to dance with it. Instead of demanding a life without loss, you learn to love more deeply while you have the chance. The spark of awakening turns suffering from an enemy into a guide, from a cage into a doorway. Asterisk. This transformation is not abstract. It shows up in daily life. A parent learns to cherish the messy moments with their children, knowing childhood passes quickly. A worker learns to pause and breathe in the middle of stress, realizing that no deadline defines their worth. A person grieving learns to honor the love behind the loss, discovering that even in pain, compassion grows. These are sparks of awakening in action. They are signs that the golden cage is beginning to dissolve. The prince's story also reminds us that awakening is not about rejecting the world, but about seeing it clearly. He did not run from suffering out of fear. He walked toward it with courage. He sought to understand life as it truly is, not as he wished it to be. In this way, his journey mirrors the path we are invited to walk. We do not need to reject our families, our work, or our society. We only need to see them without illusion, without denial. We need to recognize both their beauty and their limits, both their joys and their sorrows. This clear seeing is what makes awakening powerful. It is not naive optimism, nor is it dark pessimism. It is realism infused with compassion. It says, life contains suffering, yes, but it also contains wisdom, love, and the possibility of peace. The spark of awakening balances these truths, teaching you as to live fully without being crushed by the inevitable pains of existence. As the prince prepared to leave his palace, he was not escaping life. He was embracing it more deeply than ever. He was saying yes to reality, yes to truth, yes to the possibility of freedom. His courage is a reminder that awakening is not about distance from life, but about intimacy with it. When we dare to face suffering directly, we open ourselves to the full spectrum of being human. In our time, the same courage is needed. To look at the news without despair, to face our own aging without denial, to love others while knowing they will not always be here, to live fully, not by ignoring suffering, but by walking through it with awareness. This is the path of awakening. It begins with the spark, but it grows into a fire that lights the way, and so we arrive at the next step. The spark of awakening is only the beginning. The question then arises, how do we walk this path without losing ourselves in extremes? How do we avoid being consumed by indulgence on one side and by harsh denial on the other? The prince would soon discover the answer, not in theory, but in lived experience. His journey would lead him to the middle way, the balance that holds the key to lasting peace. When the spark of awakening first ignites, it carries a fire of urgency. The prince, now aware of suffering, set out determined to discover its cause and its cure. He left behind his palace, his comforts, even his family, believing that truth could only be found in radical renunciation. He threw himself into years of extreme self-denial, pushing his body to the limits of endurance. He ate almost nothing. He slept on the ground. He starved himself until his skin clung to his bones. He believed that by crushing the body, he might liberate the soul. But as the years passed, he discovered something startling. The peace he sought did not come. His body weakened, his mind clouded, his spirit dimmed. He realized that tormenting himself was no more freeing than indulging himself. Both extremes left him bound, one by pleasure, the other by pain. Neither brought the release he longed for. One day, weakened from hunger, he sat beneath a tree and reflected. He remembered a time from his youth when he had sat quietly watching his father work in the fields. As he breathed slowly, feeling the calm rhythm of the earth, he had touched a natural ease, a balance that needed no effort. That memory rose in his heart like a lantern in the dark. It showed him the truth he had missed. Peace is not found in extremes, but in balance. This was the birth of the middle way. It is the path between indulgence and denial, between grasping and rejecting, between clinging and avoiding. It does not ask us to abandon life, nor to drown in it. It asks us to walk with steadiness, neither running from suffering nor being consumed by it. It is a path that honors the body, the mind, and the heart as companions on the journey. The middle way is deeply relevant to our modern lives. Think of how often we swing between extremes. We work ourselves to exhaustion, then collapse into distraction. We diet harshly, then binge in secret. We chase success relentlessly, then feel empty even when we achieve it. We alternate between indulgence and guilt, between control and collapse. These swings leave us dizzy, but not fulfilled. The wisdom of the middle way offers a different approach. It tells us, you do not need to destroy yourself to find peace. You do not need to drown in pleasure either. What you need is balance. What you need is the courage to walk steadily, one step at a time, without being pulled into extremes. Imagine your life as a musical instrument, like a guitar. If the strings are too loose, no music can be played. If the strings are too tight, they will snap. But when tuned just right, they produce harmony. The middle way is this tuning of the soul. It finds the balance where life's music can be played with clarity and grace. This balance does not mean mediocrity. It does not mean living a bland or passionless life. It means living with wisdom. It means knowing when to work and when to rest, when to speak and when to listen, when to strive and when to let go. It means recognizing that extremes lead to suffering, but balance leads to freedom. Take, for example, the way we relate to money. Some throw themselves into endless work, chasing wealth at the cost of health and relationships. Others reject responsibility, living in avoidance and denial. Both extremes bring pain, but the middle way invites us to honor money as a tool, not a master, to work diligently, but not obsessively, to save wisely, but not hoard fearfully, to use resources for good, but not to let them define our worth, or consider relationships. Some cling tightly, suffocating love with control. Others withdraw completely, fearing vulnerability. Both extremes create loneliness. The middle way invites us to love deeply, but with open hands, to care, but not to possess, to give, but not to lose ourselves. Balance transforms love into freedom rather than bondage. The middle way also speaks to how we treat ourselves. In one extreme, we indulge in constant distraction, numbing our discomfort with entertainment, food, or substances. In the other extreme, we punish ourselves with harsh criticism, perfectionism, or relentless discipline. Both rob us of peace. But balance teaches us self-compassion. It shows us how to care for the body with nourishment, for the mind with rest, and for the spirit with presence. The story of the prince under the tree reveals this lesson in a vivid way. As he sat weak with hunger, a young girl passed by carrying a bowl of rice milk. Seeing his frail form, she offered it to him. At first, he resisted, clinging to his vow of denial. But then he realized that without strength, he could not continue his search. Accepting the bowl of nourishment was not failure. It was wisdom. It was balance. This moment was profound. It symbolized the turning point from self-torture to self-care, from extremes to balance. It reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to accept what sustains us, to rest when we are weary, to eat when we are hungry, to receive kindness when we need it. The middle way honors both effort and ease, both discipline and compassion. Modern life often tells us that success requires extremes, work without rest, achievement without pause, discipline without mercy. But this mindset leads to burnout, emptiness, and despair. The middle way offers an alternative. It says, you are not free when you are enslaved to extremes. You are free when you walk with balance, steady and aware. Walking the middle way begins with awareness. Notice when you are leaning toward extremes. Notice when you are driven by endless craving or crushed by self-denial. Then pause, breathe, and ask, what would balance look like right now? What would harmony feel like in this moment? The answer will not always be the same, but the act of asking shifts you back toward freedom. Balance is not found once and kept forever. It is a practice, like walking on a tightrope. Each step requires attention, correction, and care. You will lean too far at times. You will stumble. But with each correction, you grow steadier. With each breath, you return to the center. This is the path of the middle way. The prince's discovery beneath the tree became the foundation for his enlightenment. For us, it can become the foundation of a life lived with wisdom and peace. We do not need to abandon everything. We do not need to destroy ourselves in pursuit of truth. We need only to walk the middle path, honoring the balance that sustains both body and spirit. And as we continue this journey, we will see that the middle way leads naturally into deeper understanding. It is not only about balance in daily life, but about seeing the truth of suffering itself. Why do we suffer? What holds us in cycles of pain? What illusions keep us trapped? These questions will open the door to the next great discovery, the truth of the heart, the recognition of suffering, and the path beyond it. The middle way is not a straight road paved with certainty. It is a living path, shifting and breathing with the circumstances of our lives. Just as a sailor adjusts the sails to meet the changing winds, so too must we adjust ourselves to meet the ever-changing tides of existence. Balance is not a fixed state. It is an ongoing conversation between effort and ease, between doing and being, between striving and resting. When we forget this, we fall back into extremes. Some chase perfection with rigid discipline. They meditate for hours, fast excessively, or push themselves into spiritual practices that become another form of punishment. Others fall into indulgence, excusing every craving, avoiding every discomfort, and confusing freedom with the absence of responsibility. Both paths miss this essence. The middle way does not reject effort, nor does it reject pleasure. It teaches us to engage with both wisely, without clinging, without fear. In the modern world, this wisdom is more necessary than ever. Consider our relationship with technology. On one extreme, we drown ourselves in screens, scrolling endlessly, letting the digital world consume our attention until the present moment disappears. On the other extreme, some reject technology entirely, fearing it as poison. But balance invites us to use technology as a tool without becoming enslaved by it, to enjoy connection, creativity, and knowledge, while also knowing when to turn off the device, breathe, and return to the living world around us. The middle way also speaks to how we handle stress. Some push themselves relentlessly, driven by ambition, unable to rest even for a moment. Others collapse under pressure, paralyzed by fear, unable to act at all. Both responses deepen suffering. Balance teaches us to move forward steadily, neither running recklessly nor freezing helplessly. It teaches us to pause, to breathe, to take one step at a time with clarity. In health too, we see the danger of extremes. Some punish their bodies with over-exercise, harsh diets, or denial of rest. Others neglect their bodies entirely, ignoring movement, drowning themselves in unhealthy habits. The middle way reminds us that the body is not an enemy, nor is it a god. It is a companion, a vessel, deserving of care and respect. Nourishing food, gentle exercise, restorative sleep, these are not indulgences, but wisdom. Balance also transforms the way we relate to success. The world often pushes us toward extremes, to define ourselves entirely by achievement, or to reject ambition altogether. But balance teaches us that success is not the enemy, nor is it the savior. It is a byproduct of walking steadily, with integrity and presence. You may work with dedication, but you do not let success or failure define your worth. You are free to act, free to rest, free to live. The story of the prince accepting the bowl of rice milk is more than a tale from the past. It is a mirror for us today. How often do we refuse the nourishment we need because we believe it is weakness? How often do we reject rest, kindness, or joy, thinking we must prove our worth through suffering? Yet wisdom teaches the opposite. Receiving what sustains us is not failure, but balance. To drink deeply of nourishment when we are empty, to rest when we are weary, to smile when joy arises. This is the middle way in action. Balance requires humility. It asks us to admit when we are leaning too far, when we are losing our center. It asks us to listen to our bodies, our minds, and our hearts, instead of pushing them into silence. It asks us to accept that we will stumble, and that stumbling is not the end. Every return to balance is itself part of the practice. Every moment of awareness is a victory. The middle way is also profoundly compassionate. It does not demand harsh judgment for mistakes. It invites gentle correction. Just as a parent guides a child with patience, so too does the middle way guide us back when we drift. When you catch yourself lost in distraction, you simply return. When you notice yourself clinging to extremes, you simply adjust. No need for shame, no need for punishment. The return is the practice. This compassion extends to others as well. Walking the middle way means we do not condemn others for their extremes. We see their suffering and we understand it because we have been there too. We respond not with superiority, but with kindness, offering our presence as a reminder that balance is possible. In this way, the middle way is not only personal, it becomes a gift to the world. Imagine how different our society could be if more of us embraced balance. Instead of polarized extremes, we could find common ground. Instead of burnout, we could find sustainable effort. Instead of endless consumption, we could find mindful enjoyment. The middle way is not just a path for monks or seekers. It is a path for parents, workers, students, leaders, for anyone who wishes to live with wisdom and peace. And yet, balance alone is not the end of the journey. It is the foundation. Once the prince discovered the middle way, he was ready to go deeper. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree and turned inward, seeking the truth of the heart. He began to see not only that extremes lead to suffering, but also why suffering arises at all. This insight opened the door to his awakening, the profound realization that would change the world. For us, too, the middle way is only the beginning. Once we learn to walk with balance, we are ready to look deeper. We are ready to ask, what is the nature of suffering? Why do we cling? Why do we resist? What holds us trapped in cycles of dissatisfaction? And how can we break free? These questions lead us to the next step, to the truth of the heart itself. So as we leave this chapter, carry this reminder. Peace is not found in extremes. It is not found in indulgence, nor in denial. It is found in balance. It is found in the middle way. Let your life become like a well-tuned instrument, steady and harmonious, ready to play the music of compassion and wisdom. And prepare to look deeper, for the next discovery awaits, the recognition of suffering, not as an enemy, but as the teacher that guides us toward freedom. When the prince sat beneath the tree in quiet reflection, having discovered the wisdom of balance, his heart opened to an even deeper truth. The middle way prepared him to look clearly, without denial, without illusion, at the nature of life itself. And what he saw was not hidden or distant. It was something every human being already knows in their bones. Life carries suffering. At first glance, this truth may feel heavy, even depressing. The mind resists it, saying, "Why dwell on suffering? Why not think positive thoughts? Why not focus on happiness instead?" But the Buddha's insight was not meant to pull us into despair. It was meant to free us. Because when we see suffering for what it truly is, we stop being its prisoner. Suffering shows up in many forms. There is the suffering of pain, physical aches, sickness, the sting of loss. There is the suffering of change, moments of joy that cannot last, relationships that shift, seasons that pass no matter how tightly we hold on. And there is the suffering of dissatisfaction, the quiet restlessness that lingers even when nothing seems wrong. These forms of suffering weave themselves into every life. To deny them is to deny reality itself. Think of a merchant carrying a wound from betrayal. His brother once deceived him in business, and though years have passed, the sting of anger burns fresh each time he remembers. The betrayal happened only once, but in his mind, it happens every day. He replays the moment endlessly, fueling resentment, tightening the knot of pain. Meanwhile, his brother lives freely, untouched by the memory. The suffering does not come from the past itself. It comes from the clinging mind that refuses to release it. Yet how often do we do the same? We cling to old wounds, to regrets, to what could have been. We imagine different outcomes, wishing life had gone another way. We resist what is, and in that resistance, suffering multiplies. The Buddha's teaching revealed this simple, yet profound truth. Suffering is not created only by the world outside us. It is built from the grasping and resisting inside us. This insight changes everything. Because if suffering comes only from the outside, then we are helpless. But if suffering also arises from within, then freedom is possible. We cannot control every circumstance, but we can change our relationship to them. We can loosen the grip of craving. We can soften the resistance. We can meet life as it is instead of fighting it endlessly. Consider how often our unhappiness is born from wanting things to be different. We want the traffic to move faster, the meeting to end sooner, the weather to cooperate, the people in our lives to change according to our desires. Each moment we cling to what is not, we create tension. The world does not bend to our craving, so we suffer. But when we release the demand, even briefly, peace slips in. This does not mean we stop caring or stop acting. It means we act from clarity instead of craving. Imagine being caught in a rainstorm without an umbrella. You can resist it, curse it, demand the clouds disappear. Or you can accept the reality of rain, move with it, maybe even smile at the freshness of the drops. The rain remains the same. The difference lies in your heart. The Buddha called this recognition the first noble truth, that suffering is part of existence, not as punishment, not as cruelty, but as reality. To see it clearly is to begin to free ourselves from its grip, because once we acknowledge it, we no longer waste energy pretending life should be otherwise. We turn instead toward understanding, and understanding leads us to compassion. When you recognize that suffering touches every life, something softens in you. The neighbor who annoys you, the colleague who criticizes you, the stranger who lashes out in anger, all of them are carrying their own burdens. Their actions may be unskillful, even harmful, but beneath them lies pain. Seeing this does not excuse harm, but it transforms your response. Instead of hatred, you may feel empathy. Instead of judgment, you may feel sorrow for their struggle. Compassion is born not from ignoring suffering, but from understanding it. This truth also teaches us to be gentle with ourselves. How often do we criticize ourselves for not being happy enough, successful enough, calm enough? We treat suffering as a personal failure, as if something is wrong with us for feeling it. But the Buddha's insight removes that shame. Suffering is not a flaw. It is part of being human. The pain you feel is the same pain felt by countless others before you, the same pain felt by millions beside you. You are not broken. You are simply alive. The recognition of suffering is not the end. It is the doorway. The Buddha did not stop at saying life is hard. He showed that suffering has causes, and therefore it has solutions. But to reach that solution, we must first face the truth honestly. Imagine trying to heal an illness while denying it exists. No medicine will help. If we refuse to admit we are sick, in the same way, no spiritual practice will free us if we deny suffering. Healing begins with honesty. So how do we live with this truth without sinking into despair? By remembering that naming suffering is not the same as being crushed by it. It is like turning on the light in a dark room. The shadows are still there, but now we can see them clearly. We no longer stumble blindly. We can move with awareness. We can choose a wiser response. This is why the Buddha's teaching on suffering has endured for centuries. It does not ask us to escape life, but to see it clearly. It does not ask us to reject joy, but to understand that joy too is impermanent. It does not ask us to deny pain, but to see that pain need not control us. It asks us to live fully, Awake to both the beauty and the sorrow, awake to both the rising and the falling. And in this clear seeing, the heart begins to change. Instead of fighting suffering, we begin to accept it as a teacher. Instead of asking, "Why me?" we begin to ask, "What can this show me?" Every frustration, every disappointment, every loss becomes an invitation to grow in patience, in compassion, in wisdom. The world remains imperfect, but our relationship to it transforms. The prince beneath the Bodhi tree discovered that to awaken, one must first face suffering directly. Not to run, not to numb, not to deny, but to see. And in seeing, the chains begin to loosen out as we continue. We will explore not only the recognition of suffering, but also its roots. What causes the mind to suffer even when life seems fine? Why? Do we replay the past and worry about the future? Why do we struggle against what cannot be controlled? The answers will open the next door on our journey, the discovery that suffering is not random, but has a cause. And in understanding the cause, we begin to glimpse the way out. To understand suffering fully, we must look deeper than its surface. Pain, loss, and change are part of life, but the Buddha's insight revealed that the sharpest edge of suffering is not in the events themselves. It is in the mind's reaction to them. The merchant betrayed by his brother was not imprisoned by the betrayal itself. He was imprisoned by his refusal to let go, by the constant replaying of anger. In this way, the mind builds its own chains. The Buddha described this force as craving. Craving is the endless desire for things to be other than they are. It takes many shapes. Sometimes it is the craving for pleasure, the next meal, the next purchase, the next experience that promises satisfaction. Sometimes it is the craving for permanence, wanting youth to last forever, wanting relationships never to change, wanting life to stay frozen in a moment of joy. And sometimes it is the craving for non-existence, wishing pain would vanish instantly, wishing problems would dissolve without effort. Each form of craving ties us tighter to suffering, because no matter how much we want, the world does not bend to our will. The body ages, loved ones change, circumstances shift, joy rises and falls like waves. When we cling, we fight against reality itself, and reality always wins. This may sound harsh, but it is actually liberating. Because if suffering arises not only from the world outside, but also from the cravings inside, then freedom's possible. We may not stop aging, but we can change how we meet it. We may not avoid loss, but we can change how we love. We may not escape change, but we can learn to flow with it instead of resisting. Think of holding sand tightly in your fist. The harder you squeeze, the faster it slips away. But when you open your palm, the sand rests gently. Life is the same. When we clutch desperately at what cannot stay, we lose it even faster. But when we open our hearts, we can cherish what we have while it is here, without being destroyed when it changes. Modern life constantly feeds craving. Advertisements whisper, "You are not enough until you buy this." Social media shows endless images of others living what appears to be better lives. Our culture praises accumulation, speed, and comparison. It tells us to grasp, to chase, to never be satisfied. No wonder our suffering feels endless. We are trained to crave, but craving cannot be satisfied by more craving. It is like drinking salt water when thirsty. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. The only true relief comes not from getting everything we want, but from loosening the grip of wanting itself. This does not mean giving up desire completely. It means seeing desire clearly, noticing when it enslaves us, and choosing not to let it rule our hearts. Consider the example of someone caught in traffic. The craving mind says, "I must arrive faster." This delay should not be happening. The result is tension, anger, stress. But if we accept the reality, traffic is here, I cannot control it, the suffering softens, the body relaxes, the mind opens. Perhaps we notice the sky, or the song on the radio, or the simple fact that we are alive in this moment. The traffic remains, but the suffering lessens. Or think of a relationship. When we cling tightly, demanding that a partner never change, never disappoint us, never leave, we plant the seeds of suffering, because no human being can meet such demands. But when we love openly, with acceptance of imperfection and impermanence, love becomes lighter, freer, more enduring. The less we cling, the more deeply we can love. This is the heart of the Buddha's second great insight, that suffering has a cause, and that cause is craving. Not craving for nourishment, safety, or survival, those are natural, but craving for permanence in a world of impermanence, craving for control in a world of change, craving for guarantees in a life that offers none. This craving is what tightens the knot of suffering. And just as a knot tied by the hand can be untied by the hand, suffering tied by the mind can be released by the mind. This realization opens the door to hope. Because if suffering has a cause, then suffering can end. The chain that binds us can also be broken. But before the chain is broken, it must be seen. We must become aware of how craving plays out in our daily lives. Notice how the mind says, I will be happy when? I will be happy when I get the new job. I will be happy when I lose weight. I will be happy when I find love. Each promise pushes happiness into the future, making the present feel incomplete. And when the when arrives, the mind invents a new one. The cycle never ends. Freedom begins when we catch this pattern. When we smile at the craving mind and say, I see you. When we notice that the longing is endless, and that peace does not wait at the end of another achievement. Peace is here, in the breath, in the moment we stop running. This does not mean we stop pursuing goals. It means we pursue them with clarity. We can work for a promotion, but without believing our worth depends on it. We can care for our health, but without fearing every wrinkle or ache. We can love, but without demanding perfection. This balance frees us. We engage fully with life, but we are no longer enslaved by craving. The truth of suffering and its cause is not a punishment. It is a gift. It tells us that the dissatisfaction we feel is not proof of failure. It is the nature of life lived with craving. And because craving is not permanent, we are not doomed. We can train the mind. We can loosen the grip. We can walk a new path. The prince, sitting beneath the Bodhi tree, saw this truth clearly. He saw that all beings suffer because all beings cling. And he saw that freedom's possible by letting go. This insight was not just for him. It was for all of us, across centuries, across cultures. For in every life, the pattern is the same. We crave, we suffer, we awaken. This cycle repeats until we see clearly enough to step out of it. And that stepping out begins with the courage to face suffering, to name craving, to walk the path of release. As we prepare to move forward. Remember this, suffering is not a mistake. It is the teacher that points us back to the heart. It is the reminder that peace cannot be found in clinging, but only in freedom. And the teachings ahead will guide us in how to practice this freedom, not by escaping life, but by meeting it with awareness, compassion, and letting go. The next chapter will open this door even wider. If suffering has a cause, then it also has a cure. And that cure lies in training the mind, in befriending it rather than fighting it. Just as a wild monkey can be tamed with patience and kindness, so too can our restless minds be calmed. This is the next step, to learn the gentle practice of mindfulness, and to discover that within our very breath lies the key to liberation. Once we understand that suffering is not only born from the world outside, but also from the restless patterns, Within, we come to the question, how do we free ourselves? We cannot control the storms of life, but perhaps we can learn to calm the winds inside us. The Buddha's answer was not a harsh command or an impossible demand. It was a gentle invitation. Befriend your mind. The human mind, left untrained, is often compared to a monkey leaping from branch to branch, restless, noisy, never satisfied. One moment it clings to a memory of the past. The next, it leaps into a fear about the future. It plans, it worries, it criticizes, it judges. Rarely does it rest in the present moment. This is not a flaw. It is the nature of the untrained mind. But just as a wild horse can be guided with patience, the mind too can be trained. The training is called mindfulness. And mindfulness does not mean emptying the mind, erasing thoughts, or reaching a perfect state of silence. It simply means paying attention with kindness to what is happening right now. It means noticing your breath as it enters and leaves. Noticing your body as it rises and falls with each inhale and exhale. Noticing the thoughts that come and go, like clouds drifting across the sky. At first, this practice may feel frustrating. You sit down to breathe, and instantly the mind runs away. You remember an email you forgot to send. You replay an argument. You imagine dinner plans. Suddenly, you realize 5 minutes have passed, and you have been lost in thought. The untrained mind whispers, "You are failing." But mindfulness teaches the opposite. This moment of noticing is success. Each time you realize your mind has wandered, and you return gently to the breath, you are training. You are strengthening awareness. You are befriending your mind. Think of a glass of muddy water. If you keep stirring it, the water stays cloudy. But if you set the glass down and let it rest, the dirt settles and the water clears. The mind is the same. Our constant agitation keeps it muddy. But when we practice pausing, observing, and returning, clarity arises naturally. Stillness reveals itself, not because we force it, but because we stop disturbing it. This practice is gentle by design. Harshness cannot tame the mind. It only creates more resistance. Imagine scolding a child for being restless. The child becomes more anxious, not less. But if you hold the child's hand with patience, they slowly settle. Mindfulness is this patient hand we extend to our own mind's dot in daily life. Mindfulness does not require hours of sitting in silence. It can be woven into ordinary moments. Washing dishes, you notice the warmth of the water, the sound of the bubbles. Walking outside, you notice the air on your skin, the rhythm of your steps. Eating a meal, you notice the colors, the textures, the flavors. Each act of noticing transforms a routine task into a moment of presence. Modern life leaves little space for stillness. We are trained to multitask, to rush, to consume information endlessly. But mindfulness invites us to slow down. It reminds us that life is not happening in yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's fears. It is happening here, in this breath, in this step, in this moment. Consider someone overwhelmed at work. Their thoughts spin. Deadlines, meetings, expectations. Stress tightens their chest. But if they pause, take 3 conscious breaths, and simply feel the air entering and leaving, a small shift occurs. The problems do not vanish, but the grip of panic loosens. The mind finds a little space. In that space, clarity arises. With clarity, decisions become wiser, responses become calmer, and suffering softens. This is the gift of mindfulness. It does not erase life's challenges, but it changes how we meet them. It gives us a choice. Instead of reacting blindly, we respond with awareness. Instead of drowning in thoughts, we stand on the shore and watch them pass. Instead of being ruled by the monkey mind, we gently guide it with compassion. The more we practice, the more natural it becomes. The mind, once restless, begins to find its home in the present. Anxiety about the future still arises, but it no longer controls. U.S. Regret about the past still appears, but it no longer defines us. We discover a deeper identity beneath the noise, the steady awareness that notices it all. And this awareness is not cold or detached. It is warm, compassionate, alive. It allows us to see ourselves with kindness, to see others with patience, to meet the world with a softer heart. In befriending our own minds, we also learn to befriend the minds of others. We recognize that everyone is wrestling with their own restless thoughts, their own inner storms. This recognition plants the seeds of compassion. Mindfulness is not only for moments of calm, it is for moments of difficulty too. When anger surges, noticing it without judgment weakens its grip. When sadness arises, acknowledging it with gentleness prevents it from hardening into despair. When fear whispers, shining awareness on it keeps it from growing in the shadows. In every case, mindfulness is not about pushing feelings away, but about holding them kindly, the way one might hold a trembling bird carefully, softly, without harm. The prince beneath the Bodhi tree practiced this same art. He observed his mind, watching thoughts and feelings rise and fall without clinging. He saw that thoughts are like waves, but awareness is like the ocean vast, unshaken, ever present. This realization opened the door to awakening. And the same door is open to us. The practice begins small. One breath, one step, one moment of noticing. But these small moments accumulate, building strength like muscles exercised gently, day after day. Over time, the restless mind begins to soften, the suffering begins to loosen, and the heart begins to awaken to peace. This is why mindfulness is called a gentle practice. It does not demand perfection. It does not rush. It walks with us patiently, inviting us to return again and again, no matter how many times we wander. Every return is a victory. Every breath is a chance to begin again. And as we deepen this practice, we discover that mindfulness is not an escape from life. It is the fullest embrace of it. It teaches us to meet each moment as it is, with awareness and compassion. It shows us that the key to peace is not hidden in the future. It is here, in the ordinary breath, waiting to be noticed. The journey ahead will expand this gentle practice even further. For once we learn to observe the mind with kindness, we can also learn to cultivate the heart with love. Mindfulness clears the ground, but what we plant on that ground determines what grows. The next step, then, is to cultivate loving kindness too. Turn awareness into warmth, mindfulness into compassion, and presence into connection. Mindfulness begins as a seed, small and fragile. At first, it feels like something separate from your daily life, something you practice for a few minutes before returning to the rush. But with patience, the seed grows. Mindfulness slowly spreads its roots into every corner of your day, until it becomes less of a practice and more of a way of being. You may notice it first in quiet moments. Sitting with a cup of tea, you no longer scroll through your phone absent-mindedly. You notice the warmth of the cup in your hands, the rising steam, the subtle fragrance. The act of drinking becomes a meditation. Something ordinary transforms into something sacred. Then mindfulness appears in stressful moments. Perhaps a colleague criticizes you at work. Normally, anger would flare instantly, and harsh words would leap from your tone. But now you pause. You notice the heat rising in your chest, the tightness in your jaw. You breathe. The pause gives you space. Instead of reacting blindly, you choose a calmer response. The situation changes because you changed. This is the quiet power of befriending the mind. You stop being dragged helplessly by every thought and emotion. You begin to steer, gently, like guiding a boat across shifting waters. The waves still rise, But you are no longer drowning with time. Mindfulness also softens the stories we tell ourselves. The mind loves to repeat judgments. I am not good enough. I always fail. No one understands me. These thoughts circle endlessly, shaping how we see ourselves and the world. But when we practice observing them, we begin to see them as just that thoughts, not absolute truths, not chains that must bind us, just passing clouds across the sky of awareness. Imagine waking up on a stormy morning. The clouds are thick. The sky is dark. If you forget that the sun exists, you may believe the world is only gray. But the sun is still there, shining behind the clouds. In the same way, your true awareness is always present, even when covered by restless thoughts. Mindfulness reminds you of the sun. It shows you that the storm does not define the sky, and your thoughts do not define you. This realization brings profound relief. You do not need to silence the mind to find peace. You only need to see thoughts for what they are, temporary, fleeting, not the essence of who you are. You are not your worries, not your regrets, not your fears. You are the awareness that notices them all. Mindfulness also deepens gratitude. When you pay attention, life reveals its richness. You notice the laughter of a child, the kindness of a stranger, the way sunlight filters through the trees. These small details, often ignored, become sources of quiet joy. Gratitude arises naturally, not because life is perfect, but because you are finally present enough to see its gifts. And mindfulness helps in pain as well. When the body aches or illness arises, the mind usually adds layers of resistance. Why is this happening? I cannot bear it. The resistance doubles the suffering. But when we bring awareness to pain, we learn to separate the physical sensation from the mental struggle. We breathe into the discomfort. We soften around it. Sometimes the pain lessens. Sometimes it does not. But our relationship with it changes. We suffer less, even when pain remains. Asterisk, the practice is gentle, but its fruits are powerful. Over time, mindfulness reshapes the brain, rewires patterns, builds resilience. Scientific. Studies confirm what ancient wisdom taught. Regular practice reduces stress, calms anxiety, lifts mood, strengthens focus. But beyond science, mindfulness offers something deeper, a homecoming to yourself, a return to the present moment where life is truly lived. Befriending the mind is not about control. It is about relationship. Imagine walking with a loyal dog. If you yank the leash harshly, the dog resists. If you ignore it completely, it runs wild. But if you walk with patience, guiding gently, the dog stays by your side. The mind is the same. Treated with harshness, it rebels. Ignored, it runs wild. Guided kindly, it becomes a companion instead of an enemy. This companionship allows us to face life with steadiness. Challenges still come: stress, grief, uncertainty, but we are no longer powerless. We have a refuge within, a steady breath, a calm awareness, a friend in our own mind. This is liberation in the midst of daily life. But mindfulness alone is not the full picture. Awareness creates space, but what we fill that space with matters. We can fill it with judgment, or we can fill it with kindness. We can observe life coldly, or we can observe it with warmth. The Buddha taught that the most powerful companion to mindfulness is love specifically. The deliberate cultivation of loving-kindness. If mindfulness is the clear mirror that reflects reality, loving kindness is the warmth that softens what we see. Together, they transform not only our own suffering, but also the way we relate to others. Mindfulness shows us the restless mind. Loving kindness teaches us to hold it with compassion. Mindfulness shows us the suffering of the world. Loving kindness teaches us to respond with care instead of hatred. And so, as our journey continues, We step from befriending the mind into opening the heart. For the mind, once calmed, becomes fertile soil. And what grows best in that soil is love boundless, unconditional, radiant. This is the next practice, the next gift, the next doorway into freedom. When the mind begins to quiet through mindfulness, a new space opens within us. It is like clearing a crowded room so that fresh air and sunlight can flow in. In that open space, something natural arises, the heart's longing to love. Not the narrow love tied only to romance or preference, but a vast, unconditional love that extends to ourselves, to others, to the world. This love is called loving-kindness. Loving-kindness is not sentimentality. It is not limited to warm feelings or tender words. It is a deliberate practice, a choice we make again and again to meet life with goodwill rather than hostility. It begins small, like a flame in the dark, but with practice, it grows into a fire that can warm the coldest corners of the soul. The Buddha taught that just as a mother protects her only child, so too should we cultivate a heart of compassion for all beings. This is not easy. Our instinct is often the opposite. When hurt, we want to strike back. When judged, we want to defend. When disappointed, we want to withdraw. These reactions are natural, but they deepen suffering. Loving kindness offers another way. It does not deny pain, but it refuses to add hatred to it. It says, even in hurt, I choose compassion. The practice often begins with ourselves. This can feel strange, even uncomfortable. Many of us speak to ourselves with harshness. You are not good enough. You always fail. You should be better. But imagine speaking this way to a child, a friend, a loved one. It would wound them deeply. Why then do we speak this way to ourselves? Loving kindness invites us to change the conversation, to whisper instead, may I be safe, may I be peaceful, may I be free from suffering, may I be filled with love. At first, these words may feel hollow, like reciting lines from a script, but with repetition, they soften the heart. Slowly, we begin to believe them. Slowly, we begin to treat ourselves with the same care we wish for others. This is not selfishness. It is the foundation, because when we soften toward ourselves, we are better able to soften toward others. From the self, loving kindness extends outward. First to those we love easily, a friend, a partner, a child. We whisper silently, may you be safe. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering. May you be filled with love. The heart warms in the offering. Then we extend further to those who are neutral in our lives, the grocery clerk, the coworker we barely know, the stranger passing by. And finally, we extend even to those we find difficult. This may feel impossible. At first, how can we wish happiness for someone who has hurt us? But loving kindness is not about excusing harm. It is about freeing ourselves from the poison of hatred. When we say, may you be free from suffering, we are not condoning their actions. We are recognizing that their cruelty comes from their own pain. And by wishing them peace, we release ourselves from the chains of resentment. Consider the image of carrying a burning coal in your hand, intending to throw it at your enemy. Who suffers first? You do. Hatred burns the one who carries it. Loving kindness allows you to set the coal down. It frees your hand and your heart from the fire. This practice transforms relationships. A spouse who once reacted with anger now responds with patience. A parent who once scolded harshly now guides with tenderness. A worker who once judged colleagues now sees their shared struggles. Compassion changes not only how we feel, but how we act. It shapes the tone of our voice, the look in our eyes, the way we move through the world. And loving kindness is not limited to people. It extends to all beings. To the bird outside your window, to the trees that shade your home, to the animals who share this earth. This widening circle of care reminds us that life is interconnected, that we are not isolated, but part of a vast web of existence. When we practice compassion, we strengthen the threads of that web. The benefits ripple inward. 2. Studies now confirm what ancient wisdom long knew. Practicing loving kindness reduces stress, softens anxiety, lifts depression. It strengthens empathy, resilience, and joy. But beyond science, the true gift is spiritual. Loving kindness reveals our natural state. Beneath fear, beneath anger, beneath doubt, the heart longs to love. The practice does not create compassion. It uncovers it. Yet cultivating this open heart is not without challenge. Old wounds rise. Resistance appears. The mind says, they do not deserve kindness, or I do not deserve love. This is where practice matters most. Loving kindness is like exercising a muscle long unused. At first, it feels weak, shaky, uncertain. But with each repetition, it grows stronger. With each return, it grows steadier. And eventually, it becomes natural. Imagine a garden. At first, the soil is hard, dry, filled with weeds. Planting seeds feels futile. But with patience watering, weeding, tending, the soil softens. Shoots appear, flowers bloom, the garden flourishes. Loving kindness is this garden of the heart. The weeds of hatred and fear may seem overwhelming, but they cannot withstand steady care. With time, the garden blooms with compassion. This blooming transforms how we see suffering. Instead of viewing it as something to escape, we see it as an invitation to love more deeply. When a friend is in pain, we do not turn away. We draw closer. When a stranger struggles, we feel moved to help. When we ourselves hurt, we treat our own wounds with tenderness instead of cruelty. Loving kindness does not erase suffering, but it changes its meaning. It becomes the soil from which compassion grows. And so, the art of loving kindness is not separate from daily life. It is woven into every interaction, every choice, every word. It is in the way we speak to ourselves in the mirror. It is in the way we greet a neighbor. It is in the way we respond to conflict, not with revenge, but with patience. It is in the way we hold the world itself with care, with reverence, with love. The mind trained in mindfulness becomes steady. The heart, trained in loving kindness, becomes spacious. Together, they create a life of balance and warmth, wisdom and compassion. A life not defined by craving or fear, but by presence and love. And as we continue our journey, we will see how this open heart not only transforms our inner world, but also reshapes our outer relationships. For love does not stay contained. It flows outward, touching families, friendships, communities. It softens divisions, heals wounds, builds bridges. The next step, then, is to explore how the practice of compassion ripples into the fabric of our relationships, how love can heal the deepest rifts and guide us into harmony with others. Asterisk, the heart that practices loving kindness does not stay the same. Slowly, almost invisibly, it begins to shift. Resentment softens. Anger fades faster. Forgiveness feels less like a burden and more like a gift. The way we see others changes, and with it, the way we experience life. Think of a workplace filled with stress. Deadlines press, tempers rise, small mistakes ignite arguments. In such an environment, one person practicing loving kindness can make a difference. A single calm presence, a single patient response can soften the tension in the room. Like a candle in the dark, compassion spreads. One light does not erase the darkness entirely, but it makes the space brighter, and others are drawn to it. In families. 2. Loving kindness reshapes connection. A parent who once spoke harshly learns to pause, breathe, and respond with gentleness. A child who once felt misunderstood begins to feel safe. A spouse who once carried resentment feels the weight lift when kindness replaces criticism. Love, practiced deliberately, creates an atmosphere where healing becomes possible. But perhaps the most challenging field of practice is with those who hurt us. Our instinct is to protect ourselves by closing the heart, by building walls of anger or indifference. Yet those walls imprison us more than they protect us. Loving kindness asks us to try something radical, to wish peace even for those who caused. Use pain, not because they are right, not because we excuse harm, but because our freedom depends on releasing hatred. This does not mean we allow abuse or injustice to continue unchecked. Boundaries remain necessary. Protection is wise. But even as we protect ourselves, we can refuse to let hatred consume us. We can see the suffering behind another's cruelty and wish for that suffering to heal. In this way, we free both ourselves and, perhaps in time, them. History offers countless examples of this truth. Great leaders who faced oppression, whether spiritual teachers, civil rights activists, or healers, often refused to meet hatred with hatred. Instead, they chose love, even in the face of violence. Their strength did not come from anger, but from compassion. And their compassion transformed not only their own hearts, but the hearts of nations. Loving kindness is not weakness. It is the deepest strength. To lash out is easy. To love in the face of pain is powerful. To retaliate is instinct. To forgive is transformation. Compassion is not passive. It is active, deliberate, courageous. The practice of loving kindness also reveals that the line between self and other is thinner than we imagine. When we wish happiness for others, our own hearts grow lighter. When we let go of resentment, we breathe easier. When we act with kindness, joy arises naturally. The gift we give returns to us, not as obligation, but as the natural rhythm of compassion. This rhythm extends beyond personal relationships into the larger world. Imagine a community where kindness is practiced deliberately, where neighbors greet each other with warmth, where differences are met with curiosity instead of fear, where conflicts are approached with patience instead of hostility. Such a community is not utopia. It is the natural fruit of many individuals practicing loving kindness in their daily lives. Even global challenges division, violence, injustice can be softened by compassion. Loving kindness alone may not erase them, but it changes the soil from which solutions grow. Policies shaped by fear breed more fear. Actions rooted in hatred deepen division. But choices guided by compassion create pathways to healing. And every act of kindness, no matter how small, contributes to that healing. For those on the spiritual path, loving kindness is also a protection. When the heart is filled with goodwill, it is less vulnerable to bitterness. When compassion flows, envy dries up. When love expands, fear shrinks. Hatred cannot take root in a heart trained to wish happiness for all beings. In this way, loving kindness shields us not by building walls, but by dissolving the poison of hostility. The practice itself remains simple, though its effects are profound. It may take only a few minutes each day, quietly repeating phrases such as, "May I be safe, may I be peaceful, may I be free from suffering, may I be filled with love." Then extending, "May you be safe, may you be peaceful, may you be free from suffering, may you be filled with love." First to loved ones, then to strangers, then even to enemies. The repetition plants seeds. With time, the seeds grow. The heart changes. The world around us begins to change too. And so, loving kindness is not only a personal practice, it is a contribution. Each act of compassion, each prayer of goodwill, each refusal to hate adds to the collective healing of humanity. It may feel small, but it is never wasted. Like drops of water filling a jar, each act matters. Over time, the jar overflows. As we prepare to move forward, let us hold this truth close. Mindfulness steadies the mind, but love expands the heart. Together, they create the foundation for peace. Without mindfulness, love becomes blind. Without love, mindfulness becomes cold. But when joined, they form a path of wisdom and compassion, clear and warm, balanced and alive. The next step of our journey will take us deeper into how these qualities reshape our closest bonds. For while loving kindness expands to all beings, it is tested most powerfully in the relationships nearest to us. Family, partners, friends. These connections carry both the greatest joy and the deepest wounds. The art of loving kindness becomes real when practiced in the intimacy of these relationships. And it is there, in the messy beauty of human connection, that the heart's transformation shines brightest. Relationships are the mirror in which we see ourselves most clearly. Alone, it is easy to believe we are patient, kind, and wise. But in the company of others, partners, children, friends, co-workers, the truth of our hearts is revealed. Relationships are where love blossoms, but also where wounds are deepest. They are the soil where compassion must take root if it is to be real. Think of a couple arguing late at night. The words grow sharper, the silence is colder. Each feels misunderstood. Each feels unseen. Beneath the anger lies hurt, and beneath the hurt lies longing. The longing to be loved, to be accepted, to be safe. When compassion is absent, the argument becomes a battlefield. But when compassion is present, the battlefield becomes a bridge. A simple pause, a deep breath, a soft word, these can shift the entire conversation. Compassion turns conflict into connection. The Buddha taught that suffering is universal, and nowhere is this more visible than in relationships. Every person we meet carries unseen burdens, fears, disappointments, insecurities. When we forget this, we demand perfection. We expect our loved ones to meet all our needs, to never falter, to always understand. These expectations become cages. They suffocate love. But when we remember that others, like us, are imperfect and suffering beings, the heart softens. We see not an enemy, but a fellow traveler on the path. Compassion in relationships begins with listening, not just hearing words, but listening with the whole heart. Often, when someone speaks, we are already preparing our response, defending our position, or judging their perspective. Compassionate listening asks us to set aside those defenses, to be present fully, to hear not only the words, but the feelings beneath them. A spouse says, "You never helped me," and instead of reacting with anger, we hear the plea, "I feel overwhelmed. I need your support." A child shouts in frustration, and instead of punishing, we hear the unspoken, "I feel scared. Please, see me." Listening with compassion transforms what could be conflict into an opportunity for understanding. Forgiveness is another essential practice. No relationship is free from hurt. Words are spoken in anger. Promises are broken. Mistakes are made. Holding on to these wounds poisons the bond. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting or excusing harm. It means choosing not to let the wound define the relationship forever. It means seeing that the person who hurt us is more than their mistake. It means offering them and ourselves the chance to begin again. Forgiveness begins within. We must learn to forgive ourselves for the times we failed, for the ways we fell short. Without self-forgiveness, we carry guilt into every interaction, and guilt hardens into defensiveness. But when we soften toward ourselves, we create space to soften toward others. Compassion also shows itself in small acts. a gentle touch on the shoulder, a word of encouragement, a patient silence when someone needs to cry. These gestures may seem minor, but they carry immense power. They remind others that they are not alone, that their suffering is seen, that their presence matters. In a world that often feels cold, such acts are medicine. But compassion in relationships does not mean ignoring our own needs. True compassion balances care for others with care for ourselves. Without this balance, we risk falling into resentment or burnout. Setting boundaries, speaking truth, honoring our own well-being, these two are acts of compassion because they create relationships built on honesty and respect, not on silent sacrifice. Modern relationships often suffer from disconnection. We are physically present, but mentally elsewhere, lost in phones, in work, in worries. Compassion invites us to return, to put down the phone and look into the eyes of the person before us, to give them the gift of full attention, to say, without words, "You matter. I am here with you." Presence is the most profound form of love. Consider a family dinner where each member is distracted, one scrolling through messages, another watching television, another lost in thought. The food is eaten, but no connection occurs. Now imagine the same dinner where devices are put aside and each person listens, laughs, and shares. The meal remains the same, but the experience is transformed. Compassion is not only grand sacrifices. It is the choice, moment by moment, to be present with those we love. The deepest compassion in relationships is the recognition that all love is temporary. Partners age, children grow, friends move away, life changes. To love with compassion is to cherish while we can, without clinging. It is to say, "I know you will not be here forever, and that is why I treasure you now." Such love is not desperate. It is tender, generous, alive. And when loss does come, as it inevitably does, compassion helps us grieve with openness instead of bitterness. We cry, we ache, but beneath the pain is gratitude for the love we shared, for the moments we held, for the connection that changed us. Compassion does not erase grief, but it softens it with meaning. The prince who became the Buddha understood this deeply. He saw that clinging to relationships out of fear leads to suffering, but meeting them with compassion leads to freedom. He did not reject love. He purified it. He showed that love, when freed from grasping, becomes vast enough to hold joy and sorrow alike. In our lives, this is the challenge and the invitation to bring mindfulness and loving kindness into the raw, imperfect, beautiful mess of relationships, to turn conflict into connection, judgment into understanding, distance into closeness, to see each relationship not as a guarantee of happiness, but as a sacred opportunity to practice compassion. And as we practice this, the ripples extend outward. Compassion in the family spreads to compassion in the community. Compassion in friendships spreads to compassion in society. Each healed relationship contributes to a healed world. The journey of compassion and connection is not easy, but it is worth every effort. For it is in relationships that we find our deepest joys, and in relationships that we face our hardest lessons. To heal them is to heal ourselves. To heal them is to heal the world. And as we continue, we will explore another layer of suffering and healing. For even when relationships are kind, even when compassion flows, anxiety often lingers in the background of our lives. The restless mind whispers fears about the future, doubts about our worth, uncertainties about the world. The next step in our journey will lead us into this tender space, understanding the roots of anxiety and discovering how Buddhist wisdom offers peace in the face of fear. To heal relationships is not to make them perfect. It is to accept their imperfection with compassion and to walk together through joy and difficulty with open hearts. No human bond is free of conflict. Even the most loving families argue. Even the closest friends disappoint each other. Even the strongest partnerships feel strain. Healing does not mean avoiding these realities. It means learning to meet them differently, with patience instead of resentment, with honesty instead of silence, with forgiveness instead of blame. One way compassion reshapes relationships is by dissolving the need to win. Many conflicts turn into battles of pride. Who is right? Who is wrong? Who gets the last word? In the heat of such battles, love is forgotten. But compassion asks a different question. What will bring healing here? Sometimes that means letting go of the need to be right. Sometimes it means speaking truth gently, even if it risks discomfort. Compassion does not fight for victory. It works for peace. Healing also comes through empathy. Empathy is the bridge that allows us to step into another's experience. It is the willingness to pause our own story long enough to hear theirs. Imagine two friends in conflict. Each clings to their version of events, certain they are justified. But when one pauses to ask, "How did this feel for you?" a doorway opens. Through that doorway, understanding begins. Compassion is not agreement, but it is willingness to see in families. Empathy can mend generational wounds. A parent who once judged their child harshly may, with compassion, recognize the pressure their own parents placed on them. A child who resents their parents' strictness may, with compassion, see the fears that shaped that strictness. When empathy flows, cycles of blame can end, and cycles of healing can begin. Romantic love, too, is transformed by compassion. In the beginning, romance often thrives on idealization. We see the best in each other, and we expect that glow to last forever. But as years pass, flaws surface, differences emerge, habits irritate. Without compassion, disappointment grows. With compassion, love deepens. We see not only the partner's flaws, but also their humanity. We remember that just as we long to be accepted despite our imperfections, they do too. Love becomes less about perfection and more about presence. Friendships also thrive when nurtured by compassion. True friends are not those who never disagree, but those who can weather disagreement without losing care. Compassion allows us to forgive lapses, to celebrate successes without envy, to support in times of sorrow. Such friendships are rare jewels, and they shine brighter with the polish of compassion. Beyond personal bonds, compassion has the power to heal communities. A neighborhood where people greet each other with kindness feels safer, warmer, more alive. A workplace where colleagues support rather than compete fosters creativity and joy. A society where compassion guides policies becomes a place where justice and care can coexist. Though these may sound like lofty dreams, they begin in the simplest acts: a smile, a listening ear, a willingness to help. The Buddha often compared compassion to water. Just as water nourishes plants without discrimination, compassion nourishes all relationships without asking who deserves it more. Water flows freely, softening even the hardest stone. Compassion flows the same way, softening even hardened hearts. It does not ask for repayment. It does not keep score. It simply gives, and in giving, it transforms. But practicing compassion does not mean denying hurt. It is important to acknowledge pain honestly. Pretending nothing is wrong does not heal. True compassion allows us to say, "I was hurt by what you did," while also saying, "I still wish you peace." Compassion tells the truth, but with a tone of kindness instead of accusation. This honesty creates the conditions for real healing, deeper trust, and stronger bonds. It is also vital to remember that healing does not always mean staying. Sometimes relationships are too harmful, too toxic, too unsafe to continue. In such cases, compassion still applies, but it takes the form of letting go. We may walk away with respect, without hatred, without revenge. We may wish the other person healing, even from a distance. Compassion protects us while refusing to poison. U.S. with bitterness. To live with compassion in relationships is to live with humility. We admit we will fail. We will speak in anger, forget to listen, close our hearts. But each failure is a chance to return, to begin again, to practice compassion once more. In this way, relationships become not only sources of joy, but also classrooms for the soul. And through this practice, we discover a profound truth. Healing relationships is not only about them, it is also about us. When we love with compassion, our own hearts heal. When we forgive, our own burdens lighten. When we release resentment, our own peace grows. The gift we give to others is the gift we give to ourselves. The journey of compassion in connection prepares us for the next step on the path. For even in relationships filled with love, a quiet unease often lingers. Anxiety whispers in the background. Will this last? What if I lose them? What if I am not enough? These fears are part of the human condition, shadows that follow us even when the sun of love shines bright. The next chapter will lead us into this tender territory, exploring the roots of anxiety and showing how the teachings of mindfulness and compassion offer a way to live with peace in the midst of uncertainty. Even in moments of joy, a quiet unease often lingers in the background of our lives. We may laugh with friends, hold the hand of someone we love, or achieve something we worked hard for. Yet beneath the surface, a whisper remains. What if it doesn't last? What if I lose this? What if something goes wrong? This whisper is anxiety, the storm that stirs within even on sunny days. Anxiety is not only fear of real danger, it is the mind's habit of imagining danger before it arrives, of replaying past mistakes, of worrying about futures that may never come. It is the endless what-ifs that cloud our present with shadows. What if I fail? What if I get sick? What if I am not enough? Anxiety is a thief, stealing peace from this moment by chaining us to moments that do not yet exist. The Buddha saw this clearly. He described the mind as a restless monkey, leaping from past to future, never resting in the now. This restlessness creates unease, because peace can only be found in the present. The past is gone, the future is not yet here. Only this moment is real. But the anxious mind resists this truth. It tries to control what cannot be controlled. It tries to grasp what cannot be grasped. And in that struggle, suffering deepens. Modern life magnifies this struggle. The pace is fast, the demands relentless. Technology keeps us connected to endless streams of news, notifications, and comparisons. We are bombarded with images of danger, stories of disaster, reminders of our inadequacy. Anxiety becomes the air we breathe, so constant we may not even notice it anymore. Yet Buddhist wisdom offers a way to face this storm. The first step is recognition. To say, this is anxiety, this is fear, this is the storm in my mind. Naming. It brings awareness, and awareness creates space. Instead of being swept away by anxious thoughts, we begin to observe them. Like standing on the shore watching waves crash, we see the storm without drowning in it. Mindfulness is the anchor here. When anxiety rises, the breath becomes a refuge. We inhale slowly, exhale gently, and bring our attention to the present. The anxious mind screams, "What if?" But the breath whispers, "Here, now." Each breath grounds us in reality, reminding us that in this moment, we are safe. In this moment, we are alive. In this moment, peace is possible. Consider someone lying awake at night, heart racing with worry about tomorrow's meeting. The mind plays out every possible failure, every imagined judgment. Sleep feels impossible. But if they place a hand on their chest, breathe deeply, and simply notice the rise and fall of the body, a shift occurs. The meeting has not yet come. The failures have not happened. What is real is the breath, the bed, the stillness of the night. Anxiety loosens its grip when we return to the present. Another powerful tool is compassion. Anxiety often feeds on self-criticism. Why can't I handle this? What is wrong with me? These thoughts tighten the storm. But when we meet ourselves with kindness, this is hard. May I be gentle with myself. The storm begins to calm. Compassion does not erase anxiety, but it softens the edges. It reminds us that fear is part of being human, and we are not alone in carrying it. The Buddha also taught the wisdom of impermanence. Anxiety tells us, this feeling will last forever. You will always be afraid. But impermanence tells us the opposite. This too shall pass. No storm lasts forever. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall. Even the sharpest fear eventually fades. Remembering this truth gives us courage. We do not need to defeat anxiety in order to survive it. We only need to endure it with awareness, knowing it will pass. Sometimes anxiety is tied to craving, the desire for certainty in a world that offers none. We want guarantees that our loved ones will always be safe, that our work will always succeed, that our health will always remain strong. But life cannot give such guarantees. When we cling to certainty, anxiety grows. The path to peace is not in demanding control, but in learning to live with uncertainty. This is not resignation. It is freedom. To accept that change is part of life is to stop fighting the tide. To trust that we can meet whatever arises with presence and compassion is to discover inner strength. This practice shows up in daily life. Waiting for medical results, we breathe instead of drowning in fear. Facing financial uncertainty, we ground ourselves in the steps we can take without obsessing over what we cannot control. When loved ones travel far, we hold them in compassion, knowing we cannot guarantee their safety, but we can surround them with love in our hearts. Anxiety loses power when we remember that peace is not found in perfect circumstances, but in steady awareness. The storm may rage, but the sky above the storm is always vast and calm. Awareness is that sky. The anxious thoughts are clouds, shifting and temporary. We are not the storm. We are the sky. And as we deepen this practice, we find that anxiety itself becomes a teacher. Each time fear rises, it is an invitation to return to the present. Each what if is a reminder to anchor in the what is. Each storm is a chance to discover the strength of the sky within us. The path of facing anxiety is not about erasing fear. It is about learning to live with it wisely, gently, compassionately. It is about realizing that peace is not the absence of storms, but the presence of an anchor. The breath, the body, the awareness. These are anchors we can return to again and again. And so, as we continue, we will explore not only how to face anxiety, but how to transform it into peace. For anxiety is only one form of suffering. Within it lies the potential for awakening. And by meeting it with mindfulness, compassion, and acceptance, we discover that even in the midst of storms, the heart can rest in stillness. To live with. Anxiety is to live with a constant background hum, like a radio left on in another room. Sometimes it is loud and consuming. Other times it is faint, almost unnoticed. But it is always there, reminding us of uncertainty, of fragility, of what might go wrong. If left unexamined, this hum becomes the soundtrack of our lives. But when we bring mindfulness and compassion to it, the sound changes. It becomes less threatening, less defining. It becomes a reminder to return to presence. One of the most practical ways to transform anxiety is through grounding in the body. Anxiety lives in the mind, but it echoes in the body-tight shoulders, shallow breath, racing heart. By returning attention to the body, we shift the focus from endless what-ifs to tangible what-is. Simple practices help. Feeling the feet on the ground, noticing the weight of the body on the chair, relaxing the jaw, breathing deeply. Each act of grounding is like dropping an anchor in turbulent waters. The waves still move, but we are no longer tossed helplessly. Another practice is naming the fear. Instead of being swept away by anxious thoughts, we gently label them. This is worry. This is fear. This is uncertainty. Naming them creates distance. The thought is not you. It is something passing through you. By observing instead of identifying, you reclaim power. Visualization can also bring calm. Imagine sitting beneath a sturdy tree in a storm. The wind howls, the rain lashes, but the tree stands firm, rooted deep in the earth. You, too, are rooted. The storm may shake your branches, but it cannot uproot your soul. With practice, this image becomes a living reminder that you are stronger than your fears. Compassion practices complement mindfulness by softening the harshness of anxiety. Instead of saying, "I should not feel this way," we say, "It is human to feel this way." Instead of resisting fear, we hold it tenderly, as if cradling a frightened child. Anxiety often arises from the deepest human desire, to be safe, to be loved, to belong. When we recognize this, we stop treating anxiety as an enemy. We begin to treat it as a vulnerable part of ourselves in need of kindness. Imagine telling yourself, in anxious moments, "May I be safe, may I be peaceful, may I find ease." These simple phrases are like gentle hands on the heart. They do not erase fear, but they comfort the one who feels it. Over time, this compassion reshapes the inner dialogue. The storm loses some of its sting. The teaching of impermanence also brings courage. Every anxious episode has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The panic rises, peaks, and eventually subsides. Remembering this helps us endure the intensity. Instead of believing this will never end, we remind ourselves, this too shall pass. By watching anxieties rise and fall, we learn to trust the rhythm of life. Modern science echoes these teachings. Therapists use mindfulness-based approaches to treat anxiety. Breathing techniques, grounding exercises, and compassionate self-talk are now common tools in psychology. What the Buddha discovered beneath the Bodhi tree, science now confirms. Awareness changes the brain, compassion changes the heart, and both together change the way we live. Yet beyond science, the spiritual dimension remains. Anxiety often arises when we forget our deeper identity. We mistake ourselves for our fears, for our failures, for our fragile bodies. But beneath all this lies awareness itself, vast, unshaken, eternal. When we rest in that awareness, anxiety loses its grip. We realize we are not the storm. We are the sky that holds the storm. This realization does not come all at once. It grows slowly, through practice, through patience, through countless returns to the breath. Each time we remember, "I am not my fear," we loosen the knot a little more. Each time we breathe through the storm, we trust ourselves a little more. Eventually, peace becomes less of a fleeting visitor and more of a steady companion. To face anxiety is to face uncertainty. We cannot control the future. We cannot guarantee safety. But we can learn to live with openness, trusting that whatever arises, we can meet it with awareness and compassion. This trust is not naive. It is courageous. It acknowledges danger and fragility, but it refuses to let fear dictate the course of life. In this way, anxiety becomes a teacher. It teaches us humility. We are not in control of everything. It teaches us courage. We can still move forward despite fear. It teaches us presence, The future may be uncertain, but the present is here, alive, breathing. If we listen, anxiety shows us the very path to freedom. And when we bring this wisdom into relationships, communities, and society, its impact multiplies. An anxious parent who learns to breathe deeply before reacting teaches their child resilience. An anxious leader who pauses before speaking models steadiness for their team. An anxious individual who chooses compassion over panic spreads calm. In a world desperate for peace, the storms of anxiety will always come. But with mindfulness as anchor, compassion as comfort, and wisdom as guide, we learn not only to endure them, but to grow through them. We discover that the heart can remain still even as the winds blow. We discover that inner peace is not the absence of storms, but the strength to stand within them. And so, as our journey continues, we step from the storm of anxiety into the light of hope. For if storms pass, then so too does despair. If fear can be faced, then peace can be found. And the next chapter will invite us into this hope, into the practice of living with trust, with courage, and with faith in the goodness of life. When storms of anxiety shake us, when fear whispers of what may go wrong, it can feel as if the world itself is against us. Yet even in the darkest night, there is a light that never fades. This light is hope. Hope is the quiet belief that suffering is not the end of the story, that beneath pain there is possibility, that tomorrow holds. Something worth living for. Hope is not blind optimism. It does not deny the reality of difficulty. It does not pretend that pain is pleasant or that loss is easy. Hope is deeper. It is the trust that even when life hurts, healing is possible. Even when the road is long, each step matters. Even when we cannot see the whole path, the light before us is enough to guide the next step. The Buddha did not promise his followers a life without struggle. He promised a path through struggle. This path itself is hope. It tells us suffering is real, but it has a cause and it can end. That teaching alone is a beacon for weary hearts. To know that freedom is possible is to know that despair is not absolute. Faith and trust grow from this foundation. Faith is not about clinging to dogma. It is about confidence in the possibility of awakening. It is about believing that within us lies the capacity for peace, no matter how lost we feel. Trust is not about certainty of outcomes. It is about confidence in the path, in the process, in the steps we take. We do not need to know exactly where the road ends. We only need to trust that walking with mindfulness, compassion, and love will lead us toward freedom. In daily life, hope appears in simple ways. A patient struggling with illness finds courage to endure another treatment because they trust in the possibility of healing. A student overwhelmed with work continues to study because they believe their efforts matter. A parent exhausted by responsibility continues to care for their child because love whispers that the future holds joy. These small acts of persistence are hope in action. Sometimes hope is given to us by others. A kind word from a friend, a story of someone who overcame hardship, a teacher's gentle encouragement. These ignite sparks in our hearts when our own flame feels dim. And sometimes we give hope to others without even realizing it. A smile, a gesture of support, an act of kindness may carry someone through a day they thought they could not endure. Hope is contagious. It spreads quietly, invisibly, like dawn. Light across the horizon. Trust, too, is built in moments. When we sit with our breath and discover calm, even for a few seconds, trust grows. This practice works. When we face fear and realize we can endure it, trust grows. I am stronger than I thought. When we see others walking the path of mindfulness and compassion, trust grows. I am not alone. Trust is not a sudden leap. It is a steady accumulation of small proofs that the path leads somewhere real. The story of the lotus is often told in Buddhism. The lotus grows in muddy water, yet rises above the surface to bloom in beauty. Without the mud, the flower cannot exist. Hope is the same. It blooms not by avoiding struggle, but by growing through it. The mud of suffering becomes the soil of awakening. To trust this process is to believe that even in difficulty, something beautiful can emerge. Hope also protects us from despair in times of loss. When a loved one dies, the pain is sharp and real. But hope reminds us that love itself is not lost. The kindness shared, the memories made, the transformation of the heart remain. Trust tells us that grief will soften in time, that we can carry love forward in new ways. In this sense, hope does not erase sorrow, but it gives sorrow meaning. Faith and trust also guide us when the world feels uncertain. Economic struggles, political unrest, natural disasters, these shake our sense of security. But the teachings remind us that uncertainty itself is not an enemy. It is the nature of life. To live with trust is to rest in the truth that though we cannot control the future, we can meet it with wisdom and compassion. To live with faith is to believe that goodness remains possible, even in a broken world. This faith does not ask us to deny reality. It asks us to walk with courage, to say, yes, there is pain, but there is also beauty. Yes, there is loss, but there is also love. Yes, there is fear, but there is also hope. Faith is the voice that whispers, keep going. The prince beneath the Bodhi tree lived this faith. For days he sat in meditation, assaulted by doubts, temptations, and fears. A voice of despair whispered, you cannot succeed. You are not enough. Give up. But he stayed. He trusted the path. He placed faith not in perfection, but in persistence. And in the end, he awakened. His story is not one of instant triumph, but of steady trust in the possibility of freedom. So too can we live. We may stumble, we may doubt, we may lose our way. But hope invites us to rise again. Trust invites us to take one more step. Faith invites us to believe that peace is possible, even if we have not yet tasted it out as we practice mindfulness, compassion, and loving kindness. These qualities become the foundation of hope. Each breath teaches us presence. Each act of kindness teaches us connection. Each moment of awareness teaches us freedom. Together, they build a trust that no storm can erase. And this hope is not only for ourselves, it is for the world. For every person struggling, for every community divided, for every heart in despair, hope is the message that healing is possible. Compassion begins with the self, but it does not end there. Faith in peace expands outward, becoming faith in humanity, faith in the possibility of a more loving world. As we continue, we will explore this vision even further. For if hope can sustain us, it can also inspire us to act. And action guided by compassion and wisdom becomes a force of transformation, not only for individuals, but for society. The next chapter will show how Buddhist wisdom, grounded in mindfulness and love, can shape a life of purpose, resilience and service, hope. Faith and trust are not abstract ideals. They are living practices, woven into the choices we make each day. When despair tempts us to give up, hope whispers, try again. When fear says we cannot endure, trust replies, you have endured before, and you will again. When doubt insists the path is useless, faith speaks softly, peace is possible, keep walking. In daily life, these qualities show themselves in small but powerful ways. A person struggling with addiction returns to the path of recovery, not because the road is easy, but because hope tells them healing is worth it. A single parent works tirelessly, not because exhaustion is absent, but because faith in their child's future gives strength. A teacher continues guiding students, not because the world is free of problems, But because trust in wisdom's power fuels persistence, these moments may not seem grand, but they are the true fabric of resilience. They reveal the quiet strength that allows humanity to endure suffering and still create beauty, endure loss and still choose love, endure fear and still move forward. Hope, faith, and trust are not luxuries. They are necessities, yet it is easy to lose them. Life's disappointments, betrayals, and hardships can make hope feel naive, faith feel foolish, trust feel dangerous. When promises are broken, when dreams collapse, when prayers seem unanswered, the heart grows guarded. We tell ourselves, never again. I will not trust. I will not hope. I will not believe. These defenses may protect us from disappointment, but they also rob us of joy. A life without hope is safe, perhaps, but it is also small. Buddhist wisdom offers a way forward. It reminds us that hope need not be blind. Faith need not be rigid. Trust need not be absolute certainty. These qualities, when rooted in mindfulness, become spacious and resilient. They do not promise that life will unfold as we wish. They promise that we will find strength and peace even when life does not. This is why the practice of mindfulness is inseparable from hope. Each breath we take in awareness is proof that peace is possible here and now. Each act of compassion is proof that love is still alive in the world. Each moment of presence is proof that we can live fully, even in uncertainty. These small proofs nourish faith more deeply than abstract doctrines ever could. Trust also grows when we look back on our own lives. Think of the challenges you have faced, the losses, the fears, the struggles. At the time, they may have felt unbearable. Yet here you are, still breathing, still walking, still alive. Perhaps you discovered strength you did not know you had. Perhaps you received kindness from unexpected places. These memories are seeds of trust. They remind us, I have endured before. I can endure again. Hope is also sustained by community. Alone, our faith may falter. Together, we strengthen one another. Sitting in meditation with others, hearing stories of resilience, sharing our own struggles, these moments weave us into a fabric stronger than any single thread. When one person's flame burns low, another's light keeps the fire alive. This is the power of Sangha, the community of practice. In the face of global challenges, violence, injustice, climate crisis, hope is often dismissed as unrealistic. Yet without hope, no healing is possible. Every movement for change, every act of justice, every step toward peace has begun with the belief that something better is possible. Faith gives us courage to act. Trust keeps us steady when change is slow. Hope inspires us to keep building, even when results are uncertain. Hope, faith, and trust are not the denial of suffering. They are the refusal to let suffering define the whole of reality. They are the choice to see light even in darkness, to plant seeds even in barren soil, to walk forward even when the destination is hidden. They are the strength of the lotus rising from the mud. The Buddha's own journey embodies this truth. He did not awaken instantly. He sat for days, enduring doubt, temptation, fear. His awakening was not a gift from outside, but the fruit of persistence, trust, and faith in the path. His story reminds us that enlightenment is not magic. It is the steady work of hope. It is the quiet strength of trust. It is the unwavering faith that peace is possible for every being. As we cultivate these qualities, we begin to notice their fruits in our lives. We meet challenges with less despair. We greet the future with more openness. We hold the present with deeper gratitude. And perhaps most importantly, we become sources of hope for others. Our presence, our steadiness, our willingness to trust and love, these inspire those around us. Just as we were once lifted by another's light, we now carry light for others. And so, living with hope, faith, and trust is not only personal, it is service. It is a gift to the world. Every heart that chooses hope over despair adds to the healing of humanity. Every person who trusts in compassion adds to the strength of community. Every act of faith in peace brings us closer to a world where peace is real. As our journey nears its end, we prepare to step into the final chapter. We have faced suffering, cultivated mindfulness, opened the heart with compassion, healed relationships, calmed anxiety, and discovered the light of hope. The final step is to gather these threads into a single tapestry, to see the whole path clearly, and to carry its wisdom into every breath of life. The last chapter will be a gentle conclusion, an invitation to live with freedom, love, and peace, and to share that light with the world. The path of freedom is not found in distant temples or hidden in secret texts. It is lived in the ordinary rhythm of our days. Each breath, each step, each word, each choice is an opportunity to walk in freedom. The Buddha did not offer escape from life. He offered a way to live it with clarity, compassion, and peace. Freedom begins with awareness. When we open our eyes to the truth of suffering, we no longer run blindly from pain. We see it clearly, understand its causes, and discover the possibility of release. This awareness is not heavy. It is liberating. To see the patterns that bind us is the first step in loosening them. The second step is practice. Awareness without action fades. But when we practice mindfulness, compassion, and loving kindness, awareness becomes embodied. We breathe with presence. We listen with care. We respond with patience. Each small act of practice is like laying a stone on the path. With time, the stones form a steady road. Consider the morning routine. Instead of rushing through it with half-closed eyes, we can bring presence. As we wash our face, we feel the cool water. As we eat, we notice the flavors. As we leave the house, we take one conscious breath before stepping into the day. These moments may seem small, but they are the heart of the path. Freedom is not found only in long retreats. It is built in these ordinary acts of mindfulness. Compassion is the next pillar of the path. To live freely is to live with an open heart. Compassion dissolves the chains of resentment and anger that weigh us down. It allows us to forgive, to connect, to see others as fellow travelers. In a world often divided by fear and hostility, compassion is revolutionary. It does not mean we accept injustice passively. It means we respond to injustice with strength rooted in love, not hatred. Trust also guides us on this path. We may not always see the fruits of our practice immediately. Some days the mind feels restless, the heart heavy, but trust reminds us every seed planted will grow in its time. Every act of awareness matters. Every return to the breath is progress. Trust keeps us walking, even when the path feels uncertain. The path of freedom also invites us to live with simplicity. Modern life is cluttered with endless desires, endless noise. Simplicity is not about poverty. It is about clarity. It is choosing what nourishes over what distracts. It is letting go of what we do not need so that we can cherish what we already have. Simplicity creates space for peace. Imagine your life as a garden. If it is filled with weeds of craving, comparison, and distraction, the flowers of joy cannot grow. But if you clear the weeds, water the soil, and tend the plants with care, beauty blossoms. The garden of the heart is the same. Freedom is not about acquiring more. It is about cultivating wisely. This path is also a path of service. As our own hearts heal, we naturally extend healing to others. Our presence becomes calmer, our words gentler, our actions kinder. We become a source of refuge for those around us. This is not a duty imposed from outside. It is the natural overflow of a heart at peace. To live freely is to live generously, sharing the fruits of practice with the world. The Buddha often said, "Be a light unto yourself." To live the teachings is to become such a light, not by preaching or forcing, but by embodying. A peaceful person inspires peace. A compassionate person inspires compassion. A mindful person inspires presence. Our lives themselves become teachings, silent yet powerful. Freedom does not mean we never suffer again. Pain, loss, change all remain, but suffering no longer imprisons us. We feel grief without despair, fear without paralysis, joy without clinging. We live with balance, meeting each moment as it is. This balance is freedom, and as we walk this path, we discover that freedom is not a distant destination. It is here, now, in each breath. It is the choice to live with awareness, to love with compassion, to act with wisdom. It is the realization that we already carry within us the peace we seek. The journey of these teachings is not about becoming someone else. It is about returning to who we truly are, awake, compassionate, free. And this return is not a single event. It is a practice, renewed each day, each moment, each breath. As we move deeper into this final chapter, we will explore how to carry these teachings into every corner of life work, family, community, and beyond. For the path of freedom is not meant to stay on the meditation cushion. It is meant to shine in the world, to transform not only ourselves, but also the lives we touch. To live the path of freedom is to bring wisdom into every corner of life. Work, family, friendships, even the simplest daily routines become fields of practice. Freedom is not hidden in silence far from the world. It is alive in the way we answer the phone, the way we speak to a stranger, the way we meet challenges. With calm instead of panic. At work, freedom looks like presence. Instead of drowning in stress and endless to-do lists, we take one task at a time. We breathe before answering an email. We listen to colleagues with patience. We remember that our worth is not measured only by productivity, but also by integrity, kindness, and presence. In this way, work itself becomes meditation. In families, freedom appears as compassion. We meet our loved ones with understanding. Instead of judgment, we allow them to be imperfect, just as we allow ourselves to be imperfect. We create homes where forgiveness is possible, where laughter can return after conflict, where love is larger than mistakes. In this way, family becomes a place of healing rather than harm. In friendships, freedom means authenticity. We do not need to wear masks or pretend to be what we are not. We meet each other with honesty, with vulnerability, with care. True friendship thrives on this openness. When compassion and presence guide us, even a simple conversation becomes sacred. In society, freedom expresses itself as service. To live the teachings is to extend care beyond our own circle. It is to ask, how can I help? How can I bring peace where there is division? How can I bring kindness where there is cruelty? Sometimes the answer is large joining movements for justice, offering resources to those in need. Sometimes it is small smiling at a stranger, offering a listening ear, planting a tree. Every act matters. Every seed of compassion sown enriches the soil of the world. The path of freedom also means courage. To live mindfully in a distracted world, to live compassionately in a divided world, to live simply in a world of craving. These are not easy choices. They require strength, but this strength is not harsh. It is gentle, steady, resilient. It is the courage to walk a different way, even when others do not understand. And in living this way, we inspire. Our presence becomes a quiet invitation. Without words, we remind others that peace is possible, that love is stronger than fear, that freedom is already within them too. We do not need to convince. We only need to live, and our life becomes the teaching. The journey is lifelong. There will be days of clarity and days of confusion, moments of peace and moments of struggle. But freedom is not perfection. It is persistence. It is the willingness to return again and again to the breath, to compassion, to presence. Each return is victory. Each step is freedom. As we close this path together, let us remember the arc we have traveled. We began by facing suffering, acknowledging the pain that marks every life. We discovered its causes, craving, clinging, fear, and we learned to loosen their grip. We practiced mindfulness, befriending the mind with patience. We opened the heart with loving kindness, healing relationships through compassion. We faced anxiety, finding anchors in storms. We discovered hope, faith, and trust as lights that guide us. And finally, we saw how to live these teachings in every breath, every step, every choice. This journey is not ending. It is beginning anew in you. Every word you have heard, every truth that touched your heart is now a seed. Tend these seeds with practice, with patience, with love, and they will grow into flowers of freedom. Share them with others, and the garden will expand. The Buddha's final words to his disciples were simple: be a light unto yourselves. This is the essence of the path. Do not wait for someone else to free you. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Begin here, now, with this breath. Trust that the light is already within you. Let it shine for yourself. Let it shine for the world. And so we close with gratitude for the teachings, for the practice, for the chance to walk this path together. May you carry these truths into your life. May you live with awareness. May you love with compassion. May you trust with faith. May you walk in freedom. And may your light, steady and clear, bring peace to all you meet.